Today on the Coach White Podcast, we have our very first Division I head coach joining the show, and I cannot be more excited. She's currently the head softball coach at Ohio University. She was inducted into the Illinois Athletics Hall of Fame in 2019 after having an illustrious career in Illinois at the University of Illinois for the Fighting Illini. She's all-time program leader in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, home runs, RBIs, walks, total bases, as well as ranked 6th in NCAA Division I history in career intentional walks. She was a finalist for USA Softball Player of the Year as a senior, as well as she spent a few years playing professionally for the Philadelphia Force. In her first year as coach of the Bobcats, she won Mid-American Conference Coach of the Year, as well as leading her team to the second longest win streak in program history with 10, leading her team to a 32-23 record. Today, we welcome Coach Jenna Hall to the Coach of White Podcast. With the world of coaching evolving and the carousel always changing, we're going to sit down with some coaches and we're going to figure out what they coach, how they coach, and most importantly, why they got into this profession. My name is Kason Wilkinson, and I am your host of the Coach's Why Podcast.
That was my Coach's Why.
Welcome back to another Coach's Why Podcast. We have a very special guest today. We have Coach Jenna Hall from Ohio University. Don't get mistaken for Ohio State University now. We don't play that game here. We got Ohio University's Jenna Hall, head softball coach up there. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Of course. I'm super excited to have you. As I said before, technically off air, but this is my first Division I coach here, guys. So making progress in the game, and so I appreciate you jumping on here. And so as I mentioned to you just actually a few seconds ago, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to you. Why don't you go ahead and let myself know, but everybody else know, kind of where you grew up, and then how you got involved in not only softball, but maybe all the sports that you got to partake in or participate in growing up.
Yeah. Originally from South Jersey, not far from Philly. So go Birds, diehard
Okay.
Eagles fan. But we're from the area. We, my family's all, written to that part of the country. And we all grew up there, extended family. And then our family moved out to the south of Chicago when I was about 13 years old. And, I grew up playing every sport under the sun, soccer, basketball, swimming. It was East Coast, right? So that was all the rage out there. And then we moved to Illinois, and softball was really coming hard across the country out to the Midwest. And so, I played locally growing up, but when we moved out there, softball kind of became like the main sport for me. But so we moved out there, it's called Minooka is the town in Illinois, not far from Joliet. Most people know where that area is at. So grew up out there and went to high school and all that, and really kind of honed in on a couple sports. Softball was my main sport, and then basketball and tennis. And so I kind of picked up into tennis going into high school, and this is back when everyone played 3 sports, back in the day. Yeah. Right. We don't do that too much anymore due to specialization, but so just really fell in love with all 3, was successful in high school at all 3, and found my way into college athletics through the game of softball. Got an opportunity to play at the University of Illinois, did my 4 years there, and had a really good career there, and then found my way into professional and into coaching. So that's the short version. But yeah, originally from Jersey and moved into south of Chicago about, early teen years. So
yeah. So I have a few questions off of that, but I want to start with the division. You got to play at Illinois. So as you developed in softball, right? I know you've talked about the 3-sport and just to second that, double down on that. I was also a 3-sport athlete, and I'll ask this question a little bit later. But I do think that being a 3-sport athlete does, or multi-sport, maybe not 3 anymore, but at least a multi-sport athlete does help you in the sport that you're focusing on. But as you were developing in the sport of softball, and as that became kind of your main focus, when did you realize that you could play at the next level, right? Was it going to a certain tournament? Was it facing a certain pitcher? Was it maybe striking out a certain hitter, or was it a camp? Was it just talking to coaches? When did you realize that, I can go play at the next level?
Yeah, I think when you're young, a lot of it is the influence around you and what coaches are telling you, what your parents are speaking in, to existence for you, and what they see as outside observers. And so I think as an athlete, when you're younger and you're talented at something, I think you notice maybe a difference between you and the competition you're up against. But just more, I think it's a level of confidence. And again, a lot of people on the outside telling you like, hey, you're really good at this, or hey, have you thought about this, or is this something that you'd be interested in pursuing? And I've always found, I was recruited to be a hitter offensively. That was like what the University of Illinois came after me for, and what my coaches were really specific about. And so I think hitting wise, like I always loved it. I fell in love with the skill, the mentality, everything on that side of it. So, and I always, when you have an ability to do something, it's just a matter of like continue to get better. But I think a lot of it was outside influence, seeing success for myself, and just really falling in love with the sport. I think that's the core of it. At the end of the day, is you can only play at the next level if you really truly love it and you're really committed to it. So, but I think it was kind of a mixture of all those things, and softball was just kind of the one that really I found myself most in love with, and also like having the talent and ability to do it. And I played very localized travel ball. Like I wasn't on the main circuit like what it is now. Obviously, this is 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. But I think that I wasn't exposed to the recruiting and the experience of what college coaches coming out to your games looks like. I was found on accident. A coach was looking at somebody else and saw me. Which, we all hate to admit it, but that happens a lot in recruiting. You go look for somebody and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, who's that over there? And so that's kind of how I fell into the lap of my college coach. And so she just continued to watch me. And, I went to some camps as I got older. Recruiting wasn't what it is now,
right.
But I went to some college camps and a few places, and, we did the old school. My dad and I made a resume and sent out letters, snail mail, didn't have like a tape or anything, a video, but I wasn't that fancy, but I sent out letters and, we got some responses, a few things, but Illinois just kind of seemed to be the one that kept showing up. Coach Sullivan was always around, and I think one of the cool things about my experience there was I got to be at the beginning of that program. I was only the third class to attend Illinois softball program. So that was always really like something that I was excited about, of like being at the beginning of something and starting something that could, sustain through history. And
absolutely.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like that you, so you mentioned that you had all these, or I should say you fell into the lap of this coach essentially, right? So whenever that coach, and whenever you got on the radar of this coach, was there other schools that actually ever pursued you? Like, was it always like a Division I? Because I mean, when you obviously, it's hard to ask this question or word it properly, because like it sounds like you didn't have maybe all these lists of people before this coach, and that might have been a Division II or an NAI school type of thing. It kind of like you fell into a lap of a D1 coach and you kind of just stayed there. But was there other divisions that were maybe pursuing you at some point? And if they were you ever like entertaining some of those type of things, or did you kind of set in stone on the Illinois, maybe because it was local or maybe because it was a D1, school? Did that ever sit in your mind?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember, if I'm being honest, like a ton of it, like what it was like, whether because I'm old now or just because it was, just a whirlwind. But I do remember, like, I went to, it was Indiana University was a big one that was interested, Ball State. I remember specifically. According to my parents, I got a letter from Patty Gasso offering a walk-on position, but I don't know. Like, we'll see. Yeah, that could be lore or or truth. I'm not sure, but I remember that. But I think there, in Illinois where we live, there's so many universities of all levels in that region, like Lewis and St. Francis. Like, there's just a lot of schools, and so I played in that area for so long. I know that there was other like smaller schools that were definitely interested, but I think based on like what my track was on, I think they knew that I was probably going to go to a bigger university. And I think I grew up in a small town in Illinois. It was very, very tiny when we moved there, a lot bigger now. But, and I really wanted to be in a place where I felt like I didn't know everybody and I could walk in a crowd and just like be part of it, like the bigger picture, be part of the bigger experience and be part of something that was about more than just me. And Illinois has always had that history, that tradition, that loyalty piece that I've always been attached to. So I think once they were interested and I saw what they were doing and creating, I was really, really excited about it.
Absolutely. Shout out to Fighting Illini right there,
That's right.
right? Yeah, Big Orange. Yeah, I
Always,
got you. Yeah,
always.
absolutely. Hey, their football team's looking good now, right?
Oh,
They've,
tell me. Yeah.
hey, I'm sure. I don't know what it was like when you were there, but hey, I know they made some waves this year on like, oh my gosh, they actually can play a little bit of football. So,
Yeah, it's been a fun year to follow, and I was actually there when they went to the national championship for basketball, like when they had Darren
oh,
Williams, Dee Brown, all
mm-hmm.
those guys. We were in the same class, and so I got to be there during a really cool basketball era, which they've always been great at basketball, but it was a really fun time. So
Absolutely. No. And you mentioned how you got to be part of something new, right? Relatively new. And really kind of put that, I wouldn't say, I guess, groundmark or maybe blueprint to the future or to the program's future. So was that kind of like, I know you said that was really exciting to you and you were really happy about that, but did that play a deciding factor in the decision you made to go to that school, or was it something else? Like, obviously, I know like Coach Sullivan, I believe, as you said his name, or him, was it a he or she? I don't know if
she, yeah,
she.
she.
Okay, so I know you said that. I guess we'll just keep it at Coach Sullivan. She,
There
yeah,
you
she,
go.
she, was really heavy on you the entire time. But was that an influencing factor in your decision to go there, or was it always just Coach Sullivan and how she pursued you that kind of stood out?
I think it was both. I think anybody, I think when you're getting recruited, you know, there's always that you want to be wanted, right? You want to
Mm-hmm.
feel like they want you to be a part of it. They have a vision for you. And from the beginning with Coach Sullivan, she had a vision for me. Like she already knew what I could do, what I was going to do for the program, like what I could bring to the team to help us just grow as a program. And she always articulated that really well. Even when I got there, she continued to articulate that to me, even as a freshman, when I had no real idea of what this big thing was. And so,
Right.
but I think that combined with the idea of being a part of something at the beginning was really, really cool.
Absolutely. So, was there ever a coach who made an impact on your life? Let me reword that. What coach or coaches made an impact on your life? It could be more than one. And if so, why? Who were they and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Coach Sullivan and Coach Donna Tobias was our assistant coach. Both of them made a massive impact. Like I said, I think they're both of their abilities to see more for me, to give me kind of like when I wasn't sure of. I mean, I think when you play, you know that you're talented, but when you go join a collegiate Division I team, everybody's talented, right? Everybody
Absolutely.
has the
Yeah.
ability, and so you're part of something that you've never been a part of. You have to compete more. You have to show up more consistently every day, and so they always gave me the vision of. They saw more of me than I ever thought I could accomplish, and so they were super influential. And Coach Tobias, she was such a good balance of toughness and love, and that's something that I really wanted to when we get into the coaching part, but like she inspired me a lot in that area of how to like push your kids, get the best out of them, but let them know that you love them, that you're going to take care of them, that you've got their back. And so she was really influential in that piece for me when I transitioned into coaching. I had a high school basketball coach, Ray Libatory, that was extremely influential in the sense of just so supportive. He was always, again, pushing me to be the best, always had my back, like just took care of me all the way through from freshman year all the way through senior year of high school. And he supported me in all my sports. He came out to college and watched me play and professional. And so I still stay in touch with him. I just saw him recently when I went back to my hometown in September, and just a really good guy that always supported me and believed in me, had the confidence in me. Monica Johnson was my high school coach for softball for my first couple of years of high school. And she was the piece of fun that I think goes into this. Like she taught me what it looks like to have fun when you play.
Absolutely.
And that
Yeah.
fun is okay and fun is part of it. And so I've again carried that with me all the way through into my coaching years. And that's one of the first things I told my group at Ohio when I got there is like, yes, we're going to compete to win and we want to win championships. We want to play in the postseason, but we're also going to have a lot of fun while we're doing this because this game is supposed to be fun. And so she was a big influence in that area. But I think the combination of those four people have really, I've carried a piece of something that they've taught me along the way, all the way into this coaching career.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and I know you mentioned, we'll start with this question here. So, obviously, all these coaches instilled something different in you, right? And kind of every aspect of an athlete that's important. But I'm going to assume, I guess, as a coach myself, but especially when it gets to the college level, you really have to instill a lot of these things into athletes. So, do you instill or do you implement a piece of everything that these coaches taught you as a coach now? And if so, what do you think that you use the most, or maybe what's the most important thing that you were taught as an athlete that you instill in these young athletes that you have now?
Yeah, I think so. I think all of them gave me a piece. I think, like I talked about with Coach Tobias, like I love my kids. I love my team. I love them for who they are as people. And I'm very expressive about that. I'm very I make sure that it's known from day one when they are recruited or when they get to campus, if they're a freshman, to the day they graduate, that this is a bigger thing than just winning games and setting records and championships and whatever it is that's their personal goals. Like I want to remind them that we love them for who they are and who they are as people, and that we'll always have their back, and I think that's something that I took from her. And I think the fun piece, I have an assistant coach, Lily Piper, who's been with me since we got here, going into our third season. She played for me at Ohio State. She was a three-time All-American. She plays professionally still, and she is a fun player to watch. She's a fun player to coach. And so when I talked about the fun earlier, I think surrounding yourself with assistants and coaches that bring those pieces as well. It's not just you, that we share similar philosophies. And so, we've been really specific and very intentional about bringing the fun into this program and having fun on a day-to-day basis. And so I think those two things combined, and then, the part about the toughness and the competitiveness and the confidence piece, I think, I learned a long time ago that in recruiting too, and just, it's not innate for women to be confident. I think it's the best it's ever been right now. I think you're seeing women's athletics at its height, and confidence being outwardly shown with no shame, no holding back. Like we love it, and I think that, Coach Ray Libatory really instilled confidence and showed me how that works and how we can help instill confidence in our players. And so that's another thing that I'm really intentional about. And I think our staff is really intentional about, is sometimes they just can't see what they can be yet. And it's our job to maybe give them that vision or give them a piece of it and allow them to chase after it, and build that confidence. So,
yeah. So I know you're mentioning fun is a big word that you've used both for your personal experience, but also as a coach. How do you implement that into a college program whenever, I participated in Division II, right? So even then, and I'm not just, and I know probably JUCO's this way, NAI is probably this way, but it's a full-time job, really, right? And I know Division I's probably, it's at the height of all athletics, right? At least what I don't know, right? But I would going to assume that. So knowing that you're in class and you're in softball, right? For the most part, you have breaks here and there, but you're doing probably, I'm assuming you have fall ball and then you have winter break, but you're still doing workouts, and then it's a full-time thing. So how do you instill fun into a college program at a Division I level, or just maybe college, or maybe just the sport in general when you get to a certain level of, seriousness?
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I think a lot of it comes around to celebrating the right things and showing them, one, that you're a human too, and you can laugh and have fun and be serious and do all the things that you want to do. I think it's listening to them and understanding what's important to them, what they find joy in, bringing in a lot of competitiveness and practice, a lot of games, a lot of ways to start practice that are just maybe not always softball, small little things that kind of get them revved up or get them going. It's honestly, it could be when I was at Ohio State, one of the things I did, I was there for 7 years as an assistant, and I would do the warm up with the outfield on game day. And so I'd hit the, fungo and all that. And so the first thing we did every game day was I told them a joke. And it was their favorite part of the whole day, besides the game, obviously. But they would get so fired up, they would get excited about it. So it's as small and minute as that is, it's just small ways to relax them and remind them that it's not just the big thing, right? Yeah. And so I don't know. I think you have to be intentional, just like anything that, any philosophy or any culture piece or whatever it is that you're passionate about, that you're is important. You have to live it, and so it's really intentional how you bring it into the space. Absolutely. And so we just try to be aware of how we practice, how long we go, and then not being so tunnel vision for 3 hours, Absolutely. So just small things, breaking it up, and also doing things I don't know, on your bus or at the field or practice. It's like just small stuff.
Just figure out ways to get their mind off of the sport. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here because it sounds like you're a little comedian. It sounds like you got a little jokester in you. So what's your favorite joke to throw out there?
Oh man, I shouldn't have said that.
Hey, I just want one.
I haven't. It's funny. I left that there. I never took that joke thing with me, and I kind of felt like it was like meant for that place. So I haven't told jokes at the wrong time. But my best friend and I, we do like to tell jokes. Gosh, God, I don't even know. You're putting me on the spot, man.
I did.
I
Major
know.
spot there.
This is a tough one. There's just so many in my mind. I'm like, one, I have to find the good one that's appropriate, and then I can
say dark. I'm a dark humor guy, but I know we gotta keep it PG.
Okay.
PG-13.
Okay, this is like a 3-part joke. Okay.
Okay.
What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef. Okay, right. Everybody knows that one, right? Okay. So, what do you call a cow with 3 legs?
I don't know.
Lean beef.
Okay. Lean beef. Okay.
Yep. And then, what do you call a cow with which that shakes a lot?
I don't know.
Beef jerky.
Oh, fair. Okay. Beef jerky. Okay. Yes, I never heard that one. Yeah, I like that one. 3-parter. Yeah. The first one, I was like, oh, I know. I figured I was going to get all those. That. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So, and they could be, I always let them guess, and they could be the dumbest jokes, but they loved it. So,
hey, yeah, no, I like it. Okay, fair. All right, I see what you got there. Cool.
Yeah.
So, I like it. Thanks for bringing that out for me.
Yeah.
So I know that you were mentioning like at the beginning about when you were in your recruiting process and some of the coaches that you had that were influential to you. You mentioned confidence a few times. So, or excuse me, or you mentioned that they saw something maybe more than what you saw, maybe more in you, I think is what we mentioned, or how we word that. So is that something that you struggled with maybe when you were younger, or maybe struggled seeing it? Was it a confidence thing? I mean, whenever you're saying that these coaches saw something in you, what is it like, what about you did not see it? So, what did you not see that they saw?
I think for me, I think when I was in it and I was playing, I was a confident player. I think for me, anybody that knows me, like humbleness, humility, like I was just never someone that wanted to talk about my ability or my success. I just wanted to win with the team. Like I wanted it to be about the unit and the group. And so, but I think I knew that I was talented. I knew that I was, we spend a lot of time when we're younger, unfortunately, is comparing ourselves to our surroundings, right? And so I could look across and be like, okay, like I'm good comparatively, right? But I think they were able to see a vision of more than I was capable of seeing. Like when I was a freshman, for example, at Illinois, my Coach Sullivan, back when you used to write like cards and stuff to people. I mean, some people still do that. But she wrote me like this card and I kept it literally forever. And I mailed it back to her. And like, when I found out that I was getting inducted to the Illinois Hall of Fame, I sent this card back to her that she wrote me in 2003. And it said like, you're going to be our first All-American. Like, I see this for you. And then that ended up happening, like she kind of manifested it for me. And so, but I would never have seen like I could do that, so I think that's just an example of what it looked like for me when I had coaches telling me that there was more for me. But I think it was just my focus was always about the team and winning and being a part of the bigger picture, and so I didn't really spend a lot of time manifesting that kind of stuff.
Fair. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And I have a quote I love to use, and I use this one especially when I first got into coaching, high school, right? Where I was at in my high school, in my county, the rival school, when I was in school, my high school won 5 straight titles for wrestling. And then I came back and we won in COVID year, but the crosstown rival won 2 years in a row. And then the small school across the way won 2 or 3, or they've won X amount in a row. And then the other tri little school, they were on pace to win or they were on pace to win one. So I came into an area where it was a little bit of a culture change, right? We were struggling a little bit, at least historically. And so like I compared myself and to a point where it was like comparison's the thief of joy is the quote that I have, right? So I know that you mentioned earlier, like how you'd compare yourself to other people, and obviously on a positive level, right? It sounds like, but I do think that can sometimes take away from that confidence and or the vision you see just because of those little things that it could be something small, right? Oh, this girl batted 500 against this pitcher and I only batted 250 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the case is. I'm sure there's different areas in softball that you could compare to, but I do think, I guess as a whole, that doing that can sometimes take away from just as you mentioned, the confidence and the humbleness of the sport.
Yeah, I think there's a way to go about it that, I mean, I've used that quote. I agree. I think it's one of the very direct and makes its point very like profoundly. And we've talked about that a lot with our team. Like we use the term of like the opponent is the formality. Like you have to have an opponent, right? It's really not about them. It's about how can we play to our best today? Like how can we go about it every single day and play to our best? And like, I think there's a way to look and have vision and compare in a sense of like an example. There's like, when I was in college, I had this like on my door, my senior year of college, I was like so determined to be like, have a great year and finish strong. And I had this list on, when I played in the Big Ten, there were All-Americans at 3 other schools at my position specifically, just at first base. There was like 2 or 3 other All-Americans in our conference. And so I had a lot to go up against, but I made a list of all those first basemen in our conference. And I was like, every day I walked past it with their statistics on it. I'm like, this is my goal. And so I think if you can frame it in a way that's uplifting and motivating, not
Absolutely.
so much like looking at it like now we go on Twitter and we see everybody's highlight reel. It's like, my highlight reel is not as good as hers, or like, I can't do that. Instead of using it in a way that's like, this is where I want to get to and who I want to be better than. I think there's a balance, but when we get caught up in the comparison of we're not enough, or we're not doing as much as this person, or we're not seeing this, like, we see everybody else's highlight reel. We only see the stuff that we go through every day. We don't put that on Twitter. That's our struggle constantly, is not looking this direction when we can be focused on ourselves.
Absolutely.
More.
Yep. Highlight films are great, right? It shows your the great moments, but I would assume, and this is something I was told, but actually whenever I was recruiting, like, hey, show me your whole game film, because it's not the good things you did. It's like how you react when you do something bad, or how you interact with people, or whatever the case is, right? So I definitely agree that the highlight films are great, but they can definitely be misleading, I guess. But I do like that you put that up as a motivational side of things versus how most people can take it as like, no, I'm not as good as her. So I do appreciate that for sure. I'm going to use that for sure. I like that. Comparison is a thief of joy if used negatively. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
So now that we're talking a little bit about coaching, let's kind of dive into you as the coach. So when did you decide that coaching is what you wanted to, excuse me, when did you decide that coaching is what you wanted to do? And then let's start there. Yeah. When was this something you wanted to do?
Yeah. I thought, coming out of college, I thought I was going to continue on to become an educator, like to impact in that space. And then having the college career that I had the opportunity to play professionally right out of college. And so that was something, again, that I had never really seen. And when the opportunity came, I was like, absolutely. And I got to be surrounded by these world-renowned athletes. Natasha Watley was one of my teammates. Chelsea Spencer, who's now the head coach at Cal. She's won national championships. Jennifer Stewart from Oklahoma. Yep. I could go on. And the people I was surrounded by just really inspired me that coaching is another avenue, in educating or giving back. And I think because I knew that I was able to continue my playing career past what I thought it was going to be. And coaching was a great profession to kind of be able to play and do something professionally at the same time. And so I think that combined with I was, my first 2 professional coaches were Rachel Lawson from Kentucky and Carol Drohan from Northwestern. And was so, lucky to have them as our coaches, and the amount of time I spent just learning from them, day-to-day interactions. And then I think the biggest piece for me was realizing that this game can be taught in so many different ways. We come up through and we get coached the way we get coached, all of us individually. And then you meet more people that are inspired and love this game. And you learn that's like, wow, you can coach hitting this way and this way and this way. I can coach defense this way, this way, and this way. And I think that combined with just giving back to what the sport gave me, what it's done to my life, how it's changed me as a person, all those things kind of rolled into like a big ball where kind of my inspiration to continue to coach and to give back at the end of the day.
Right. No, I love that. I think that taking and implementing things that you learned, right? Like that's the idea of a coaching clinic or whatever, is to take things that other people have either found success with that they do and put it into your own scheme or your own playbook, if you would. So I love that you took some of those things from those coaches, especially on the professional level, I guess all the coaches, and put it into your own little, ball that you can take to wherever you go. But it sounds like though you've evolved with it too, though, right? Like coaching 2010, 2000 or whatever, right? Coaching 2006 to 2015 to 2020 to 2025 are completely different athletes, completely different areas, right? Of whether it's a personal side of things, an athletic side of things, or whatever it is, right? I mean, especially at Division I level now, right, which we'll get into this, but NIL, transfer portal, these things all are huge in the game. So those things are also something you have to accommodate into it, not just the coaching side of things anymore, right? So there's so many things that evolve, and so you are forced to do that, especially if you want to be successful in the world of coaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for sure evolved, for sure have grown, for sure have learned on good days and bad days. Like I think that's the one thing that as an adult you kind of learn is that the tough days, the tough years, the tough whatever, the game, those teach you way more than anything else. Like the hard stuff teaches you a lot. And so I think if I was still the coach I was in 2007 when I started, I don't think I would have found this track along the way. I learned a lot from the people around me, the head coaches I worked for, and honestly, the players teach you so much. They teach you so much about like, it kind of is like a ability to see yourself through them and like how they envision you, what you give them, I think, and how they ask why, how they ask for what reason, how they ask like, teach me this more, don't understand this. Like those are the moments where you grow a ton. But yes, evolved for sure. And yeah, they're not the same players they were 20 years ago, but I appreciate and love where they're at now. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like I said, like the confidence in the growth of our sport and the ability to just like play with passion and show that without any kind of like holding back is awesome.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that women's sports, in most sports are at a all-time high. Like just examples, right? Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, right? What they've done for the game of women's basketball, and then women's wrestling is at an all-time high when it comes to being more and more programs being created and just the numbers of girls in the last 5 years, right? And then women's softball, I think I just talked to another, the fact that they are creating a professional women's baseball team or baseball league, but also like historic. I wish they would bring it back to the Olympics. I wish they would, which I think they are. I think they are. LA, they are.
Yeah.
But the idea is like women's sports is at an all time high, at least in my opinion, on marketability maybe, but like viewership. So I do think that it's a great time to be a woman's coach and being a young female athlete in the world right now, for opportunity, but also for the idea that they can actually make money and do this professionally, whatever sport they're in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that now that you've told me, how long excuse me, now that you've told me why you wanted to do this, let's talk about your timeline, right? So I know you just mentioned you started back in 2007. So let's start and tell me kind of your timeline. So when you started, which was 2007, and now you're at Ohio, but what was your timeline from start to finish, and let us know kind of what schools were and all of their transitions.
Yeah, so I actually started my coaching career here at Ohio University as an assistant in 2007. I did an extra lap in college academically, so I finished in 2007, and I was playing and got a friend of mine was coaching here, and I, just like any job, it's like, do you have experience? Didn't have any experience, so just getting my foot in the door. So I got a part-time assistant job here in 2007. It turned into a full-time, but I stayed here for 5 years under two different head coaches, Coach Joe Matouche and Coach Jody Hermanic. And so I stayed here until 2012. In that summer, I was approached by Kelly Kovac Shanley she'd just gotten the job at Ohio State, and she was at Miami of Ohio before that. So we were actually rivals in the MAC. And so she got the job and asked me to come interview, and I interviewed up there, and she offered me the job. And it's as hard as it was to leave here, because I'm back here, obviously, so this place means a lot to me. It's got a piece of me, and but the opportunity was just so big, and to move up to that scale and to see what I could do. Like, am I good enough to do this? That was the big, test. So I was at Ohio State from the fall of 2012, and then stayed there for 7 seasons to the spring, finished in the spring of 2019. At that point, it just needed a change. I wanted to change it up and challenge myself, try something new, and so I took an assistant job at University of Pittsburgh in the ACC, again, under Coach Jody Hermanic, who was there at the time. So I kind of reunited with her. I spent 3 seasons there in the ACC and at that university. And then this job, didn't know that it was opening up. It was kind of a surprise to everybody when Kenzie left, and she had been doing a really good job. And so an alumni of this university texted me and said, "Hey, OU question mark?" And I was like, "Oh, you, like, that's not open." She goes, "Yep, it just opened today." So I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, what do you think about Athens?" And she was like, "Let's do it." And so she was so supportive. Yeah. And I emailed my old administrator here, so she's still here to this day, Amy Dean. I said, "Hey, when this job is..."
Oh, shit. Sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. Coach, I'll go ahead and finish up. I know you're mentioning you got a text from an alum about the OU job.
Yeah, I got a text from the alum, and she said, "OU question mark," and I didn't know. And so I asked my wife and asked her what she thought about Athens. And she's actually from Parkersburg down the street in West Virginia. So this is a great spot for us. And so she said, absolutely. And reached out to the administrator, said, "Hey, when this job becomes available," because they came in 2019 when I was still at Ohio State, that job had opened up, and they asked me if I was interested in it. And, at the time, I don't think I was ready to take on that head coaching spot yet. I just didn't feel it I knew I wanted to someday. I just knew I needed to be ready because this, it's a serious job and it's a lot of responsibility. And I was like, in 2019, I just wasn't ready. And so when I said it was, let me know when it's available, I applied right away, and, gratefully, thankfully, they entrusted me to take over the program, and, been here ever since, and just so happy to be back in Athens.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. So knowing that, right, what do you love about coaching? You've been doing this for a little while, right? Coaching in general. So it's only been a few years. I mean, you're only like 34. So, you've only been doing it for a short period of time.
Wow. Thank you. Yes, I'll take that.
So what do you love about coaching, and is there anything that you dislike, or do you kind of just love it all? What are the two what do you love and hate or dislike about it?
Yeah. It's definitely a love more than anything. I think that's the one thing about, like I said earlier, playing at a high level, you have to love the sport, and to coach at this level, or any level, honestly, coaching in general, you have to love it. Like, you have to love it. You have to know your why, you have to know your intrinsic motivation. You have to know, always be able to hold on to that piece, because it gets hard, like I said, it's a lot of responsibility, not just the wins and losses. Obviously, you win, the team did great. You lose, the coach didn't do their job. That's the round, thing that happens with coaching. But I think the responsibility of being someone to look out for these young women when their families aren't here, when they're off in college, 18 to 22, it's also your responsibility to make sure that they're safe and healthy and taken care of. Yeah. So there's two folds to that. So, I love it. I love the competitiveness. I love the strategic. I love being a part of something bigger than myself. That's one of the main reasons I love about sport. It's about a bigger picture than just you. I love the relationships I get to build with these young women, and now coaches or my players that I still talk to, that I coach 10, 15, however many years ago. I still get to see them get married and have children, and be in their life forever, if that's the relationship I can build. And so all those things I love about it. I think if anything, it's difficult. I think, at this level, it's all consuming. It's all consuming. And the work-life balance that they tell you to find. It's not really balance. It's just really about making choices and decisions and living with those choices and how you want to separate. But I think if anything, it's just that it's all consuming, even though, we're
Absolutely.
in this downtime in between fall ball and season's about to get kickstarted on January 13th. We start up but still like I'm consumed now, like about
Absolutely.
preparing and what I can do to help get our team ready in about 3.5 weeks before we play our first game. So, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It never really goes away. You can't ever put it down.
It's always going. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you mentioned something about media. So this will be the last non-coaching thing. I guess it's still coaching, but that's not one before we get into like some recruiting and back half questions. But I know you mentioned about like media, right? And you touched on it just a few, I don't know, earlier in that statement there. So my question is, it's always been a question for me, right? Is college in particular, Division I in particular, but professional, right? PR is huge, right? You have to have a really good PR representation of yourself and the university or institution, whatever it is. So like, and you mentioned about whenever you're doing well, it's well, but when you're doing bad, you're getting slammed, right? And that's kind of the case in most levels. It's not just Division I, but like, how do you handle the media or whatever the case is, naysayers or whomever might be talking or whatever, right? Outside sources, and how do you handle that as a coach, knowing like, hey, if you knowing that if you don't live up to a certain standard or live up to a certain expectation, that you're going to probably get the bad end of the stick, regardless of it might not even, it could just be injuries, or there could be a lot of outside things that, or game things that influence that series or whatever. So I guess, how do you handle those outside sources and media as a head coach of a Division I program?
Yeah, I think, I would say a couple things. I remember one, this is the one profession that everyone thinks that they can do, that everybody has an opinion on, that everybody at home, in the stands, anywhere really, they have an opinion on how we should have done it differently or how we could have done it this way versus that way. And, you have to know that going in, and you have to, it's almost like you're not putting up a wall, but there's this like bubble of protection of like, I know myself, I know who I am, I know what I give, I know how hard I work, I know what my intentions are, and you have to hold steadfast to that. You have to hold steadfast to yourself, your overall belief in what you're doing, your why is so huge. And it's got to be yours and yours alone. Like obviously we all have families and things that we play for, but really at the end of the day, you have to have your own why, your own reason, the own thing, that thing that stays true to you. And so I think you have to have that little bit of a bubble of like keeping that to you and knowing who you are. I think, I think it was Dabo Sweeney said it best, like, I'm not going to take advice from someone I wouldn't go to for, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, of course.
you have to know your circle. You have to know whose opinion matters.
If their number's not on your phone, you don't. If they don't have your cell phone number, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have my circle of people that I look to and that I care about their opinion and what they think, and I'll ask them and want to hear their advice. And but I think that's got to be known, and you got to know what it is. And so the rest of it is just noise. It's just noise from people and outside factors. And we in our team we call it the circle of loyalty, and I give them this thing every year, and it's almost like loyalty is one of our core four core values in our program, and I put the circle of names around the word loyalty and some images of our program, and it's just a list of the team names, our coaches, and any staff or people that are committed to the team. And we have a discussion every year. It's like, I love your families, I love your parents, but they're not in the circle because they want the best for you. They don't want the best for the team. You know what I mean? Like, and so those are the people that we should be listening to, that we should be talking to, that we should be paying attention to. And once you get out of that circle of loyalty, their interests don't align with your interests, because our interests are the team and what's best for us. And so, not to say that they're not important in your life, but they're not the biggest influence in this group.
Absolutely.
And so, I think that's kind of a way to go about like also keeping your players invested in the team and the group. And identifying and being able to say, like, when you go to dinner after the game and you're with your family and they're like, whether you did play, didn't play, this or that, like if they're discussing in a way that isn't supportive of the group, do you have the ability to have a voice to be like, that's not what we're about here. Like, that's not who we are. That's not what I want to be discussed. Like, it's about the team, whatever it is. So, we have those hard discussions. We try to foresee adversity because we know it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Like tough things are going to happen. So how do we prepare on the front end to be ready to take those on when those come around? So, but I think that's
Absolutely.
how you stay steadfast, and you create that bubble, and then you have your circle, and you really have to block it out, and don't read Twitter. Don't read your DMs. Don't read your Instagram.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't go through at the level that, these football coaches and basketball and like even high level softball, like, yes, we all have our things, not to say one's harder than the other, but you just have to have those kind of things in place to protect yourself.
And I'm glad you brought up the loyalty thing, because this is going to go into, it's going to transition very well into the NIL question and the transfer portal question, right? And I'm sure you get this all the time, and I'm probably just another, in this space, another preaching to the choir thing, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you build loyalty, knowing that if they're upset with you, they can leave and just go somewhere else, right? And then also, like, NIL plays a much bigger factor in your case, because as I mentioned, like being Division I coach that I have yet to really talk to, right? Like, your NIL is probably higher than any other coach I've talked to in general, but or just maybe even higher than in my head, because I don't know how it works, right? That you may have. So, like, how do you build and keep women in a program for 4 years, I guess 5 years, I guess maybe even 6 years, knowing how it's been the last, right? Consistently to buy into you when it comes to the loyalty, and how do they keep that? I know your loyalty was about like the circle, but I'm assuming that also is influences like to the program, to us here, what we're building, right? So, like, how do you navigate that space?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been really, at our level, and even at our, we're in the group of 5, but the mid-major conferences, like, I have some kids that dabble in NIL on their own, but it's not at the level, like, I mean, there's softball players out there making 6-7 figures, when it comes to their social media and different things, whatever it is. But in my space, it's not as much of a factor, doesn't play as much of an impact. The portal, absolutely. I think where we live at in our space, it's really intense because, I've got a couple kids that I know in this program that could play in the Power 4 now, not Power 5, the Power 4.
Power 4.
I'm still adjusting to that. But I've got a couple that I know that if they wanted to, they could go seek that out. I think they would have an opportunity and they could find a space. But it all goes, I say this with I preface this by saying you could do everything right and they still leave. You could do it all right. But, I think it starts in recruiting. It starts in the culture and the way you speak about your program, the way your players speak about your program. I think that where I'm at, Ohio University, the combination of academics, athletics, community, college campus, all of it combined, people come here more than just for softball. Like, the kids that come here are so passionate about this place, and it means a lot to them. This town specifically, if you've never been to Athens, like, it really just pulls you in. It's the university is the town, and the town is the university, and it's all mixed in. So I think, you do your due diligence in recruiting, understanding what these players are looking for, what their goals are. But you also have to know that if they do leave, like, I'm not a coach that's going to beg kids to stay. Like, if they're already there, there's not much more that I can do or say to keep them from going. And so our job is to be as prepared as possible. And a lot of this, honestly, like, I've had, in the 2.5 years I've been here, I've had multiple conversations with, like, look, I got this feeling, I got wind that you might be thinking about leaving, or that this, at the end of the year, like, you're going to entertain or whatever. And I just have very upfront, honest conversations with my players. Like, and that's something that is part of our program is, I have they know that they can come talk to me about anything harder. If it's difficult, we can have that conversation and be human beings and have a honest discussion. And so, but the portal, I'm a proponent of, I like it. I think, like anything in life, like, some things get abused and used in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, so Is it difficult as a coach, like to know that our kids could leave anytime and us still have the expectation of continuing to win? Yeah, that's really, really hard. But I chose a department that is supportive of doing the right thing and being good people and then also winning at the same time. So I think you have to be strategic as a coach in what university, what department you pick to, go into. And so I think, yeah, for sure. And know that your vision aligns up with theirs. And so, but it's something we have to navigate all the time. I mean, I come in whenever we get done in May, it's that you have your exit meetings and you're like, okay, like, is anything going to happen? Is it going to pop up? And, we've lost one kid to the portal, or should two to the portal, and both left amicably, and it was their decision. And, I support, like I said, like, you just have to be okay with it. And in a sense of like, it can't wreck you and it can't put you in a place that you're not yourself,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to continue to grow. So
yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. And if we're going to continue to recruit high level players, we have to know that is going to come with it. If we find the kids that are that good, then, good on us for recruiting them. You do your best to get them to stay. But at the end of the day, like, you also know they only get 4 to 5 years at this. And if I have a pitcher that's that good and she wants to see what it's like out there, who am I going to be the one to tell her, don't go to the Power 4, don't do that.
For sure.
So, yeah.
So never been to Ohio, to be honest with you, but I know that like your football program right now is doing really well.
Oh man,
right?
so
I know
cool.
they're killing it. So I've had this conversation with other coaches on the smaller scale whenever like I'll ask them about like the college experience, right? And I think that college experience can play a factor, right? Like going to Ohio State, University of Miami, UCLA, right? Those are, whatever the case is, right? These are what envision, right? In the stereotypically, those are 80,000 kids on campus, or however many, 50,000 kids on campus, and they're all this stuff, right? So, but a lot of that too, even if it's not necessarily that vibe as a social side of it, other sports doing well can sometimes play a factor into kid wanting to be a part of it, just because they know our football games are not going to go watch our football team get blown out or whatever. So, is that something that you think that is maybe a recruiting tool? Which I'm going to double here. So I'm going to ask you, do you think that the other sports being successful in your school help you get kids here on the level of maybe a social standpoint? And then the second part of this is, when it comes to your recruiting side of things, when you are recruiting these athletes, where are you looking? How are you getting them? Are you looking at camps? Are you looking at are you looking at video? Highlights? Are you scouring? I know you said you don't look at Twitter, but are you scouring Twitter?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Okay, fair.
I don't read the comments after games, that's all.
But you're looking at highlights, that's fair. I got you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more of like, I guess to answer that two-parter of does other sports influence maybe getting people in? And then also like on the recruiting just trail, how are you getting kids? Where are you looking for them? And then how are you able to identify a high-level kid versus maybe a kid who's still very good, right? Not to knock their talent, but maybe is not even a mid-major or maybe not a Division I level athlete, So how are you able to navigate those? I guess that might have been a three-parter, but
no, I got you.
Take it as you will.
Yeah, no, for sure. I worked at Ohio State, like, in my personal opinion, like, that's got to be the biggest brand when it comes to college athletics, not just football, but like their brand is world renowned. It's massive. And so like when you work for a university like that, even when I was at, being here at Ohio, like anytime football, basketball, they're elevated, they're winning, they're on TV, they're bringing in the financials, like all that stuff impacts the rest of us. It definitely helps. I think any kind of winning, like when you recruit kids, like, we take them around campus, we have them meet people, we run into other coaches, like when you are surrounded by winning programs, winning culture, you can feel that it makes an impact. Like Ohio has a department that consistently wins championships in all their sports. This isn't just like a one sport dominated department. Like last year, our women's soccer team won. This year, it's our football team. Our basketball team is having, they're going to have a great run in through the max. And so I think, when you recruit, you feel that. I think it makes an impact for sure. I think anytime your football team gets that kind of publicity, what Tim did here during his time, and now with Coach Smith taking over, and in a transition when you lose, Ohio was the only football school to not have a kid leave in the portal before the bowl game. They all stayed.
That's awesome.
Like, and I think that
Yeah.
speaks again to our department, to our university, to our community. People stay here because it's special. And, we feel that as coaches every day when you're surrounded by it. And so I think it definitely makes an impact. I think when roll that into the recruiting piece, I think, again, you bring in kids, they're surrounded, they see winning everywhere in the department. It makes an impact. And so I think when you're looking for the right kids to fit into your program, there's the talent level, which is, we get asked this question a lot as coaches, like, what are you looking for in a player?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's like a huge question we get at every camp that we have or attend, and or every Q&A. And so it's like, you have your talent level. Like, I need to go out and see you hit and know that you can hit to all fields, that you don't swing and miss very often. Like, if you don't swing and miss a lot at your level now, that translates over for us. That
Right.
has like some things like, or your athleticism, and I could go on and on, but I think there's those pieces that you have to think about, that do they fit into your culture personality wise? Like, one of the questions I ask a lot of recruits is like, game on the line, would you want to hit in the winning run, score the winning run, or make the last defensive play? Like, so there's questions like that. Yeah, that questions like that get you to understand their personality and what's important to them. I think.
Is there a right answer to that?
There's not a right answer. I'm just always intrigued to see what kids say. I mean, I think majority would say hit in the winning run.
Winning run. Yeah.
I think you have your few that say defensively, which aren't very often. You don't get that, like, make the last out. But the score the winning run, that comes up too. Like, I think that what does that tell me about their personalities and what they find value in, So but yes, we look at Twitter, we use Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff plays a factor. I think it's camps, emails, we get emails daily, so many emails.
I'm sure.
We host our own camps. I also work outside camps, and then you hit the pavement and you work hard and you show up and you watch games from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. and 3 days in a row. And because really you have to see it. You have to see it with your own eyes, in person. Yep, in the flesh, because you get their passion, the way they interact with their teammates, the way they interact with their coaches, their parents. Like, it's the old story, but I've dropped kids recruiting based on interactions with their families and their coaches, because if they're doing that, I don't want to, they're not going to listen to me if they're not listening to them. So, I think all those factors, I think constant conversations with travel ball coaches, high school coaches, I think that's the one area that we, due to the way sports has been, how it's evolved into very personalized training, one-on-one with instructors on all levels, that sometimes we bypass the high school coach and we don't interact with them enough. And I think that they have a huge vision into who these kids are as people. I think, and the respect they have for their people in the game. You get that a lot from high school coaches. So I think sometimes not skipping over those people, because they have a huge vision, I think, of these young people.
Do you think that the travel ball and kind of specialized, I know I mentioned earlier, we talk about 3-sport and stuff, and does it, and the 3-sport athlete versus the, specialization, stuff like that. We don't necessarily have to touch on that because I think this will answer it. Do you think that I wouldn't say necessarily ruining the sport of like you said, the social side of it when it comes to like the coaches and this, because like I guess the best way to put it is like this. I have had athletes as a coach where they gave me kind of probably 70% of their effort in practice, but then you go watch them go to their travel ball or their club wrestling, and they're giving 100% more than they gave me, right? And it could be because of I was the new coach, right? I didn't build that relationship with them, right? I know there's probably some variations of their reasoning, but I also feel like I've heard this before to where like some high school coaches can feel that way because this kid's spending all this money, all this extra time with this coach that's individually helping them, and then they go to the high school coach and they sometimes, I wouldn't say not saying they don't listen to them, but they're not, if a high school coach says, hey, I feel like you need to, maybe in baseball or softball terms, right, standing in the box, you're a little early, you're a little late based off of this, whatever, right? They have all these different variations, and they asking to tweak them here, but then they go somewhere else and they're not, right? Or whatever the case is, right? And it can go back and forth. Yeah. So it's like, how do you feel about the side of travel ball or club affecting high school sports on the level of that coach to that athlete? and then maybe transition into affecting you, as you mentioned, as they try to go to the next level.
Yeah, I think it's funny. One of the questions I get a lot from kids that are committed to our program, say they're juniors or seniors, I get this. My high school coach tells me I should do this, but then my travel ball coach tells me I should do this, and it's not like it's conflicting. Like, so what should I do? Should I just do what makes them happy? Like, like I get that question a lot. And so I think the one thing I tell them all the time is like any opportunity to put a new tool in your toolbox, whether it's you believe it's right or wrong, use it. Like you don't know when this thing's going to show up in the game or in your training. And so I think depending on, you have to think of it as like a growth mindset opportunity. That's kind of how I try to tell our kids to look at it. Even like when we coach our own players, like we try things and maybe it works for Sally, but it doesn't work for Sarah. So like we have to kind of find a different way. And so I think the specialization, I mean, listen, I think the offense of our sport is at the best. I mean, I see kids hitting at a level that are just like blow me away when I watch them on, whether it's my own kids or I watch them in a different game. So I think the game has evolved so much because of the specialty focus and the training. Like these kids are training at a level that, we never trained at 20 plus years ago.
Absolutely.
And the knowledge and the biomechanics, I mean, there's just so much you could go into, right? And so I think it's completely evolved our sport. But I also think it's taken away from athleticism overall. And sometimes, not all time, but I think there's a limit sometimes to their physical coachability because they don't know what this movement feels like because they've never jumped like and done plyometrics. They've never done a sport that takes them at a side to side. Like when I played tennis in high school, it made me so much better of a defender at first base. So like, but that will train you in ways that you could practice for hours at softball, but it's not going to do the same thing that, a 2-hour tennis match can do for you. So I do think our sport has evolved and is so much better than it's ever been. But I think there's a athleticism piece that people miss out on, I think, by playing multiple sports. So I wouldn't say it's ruined it in any way. I think it's a balance of, I think the hardest part, honestly, is just, so many of my kids that I like, again, recruit or are committed, I'm like, they play like I have a committed kid that also plays soccer in the fall. Very good soccer player. And she's like, is it okay that I do this? I don't play as much fall ball. I'm like, do your thing, please. Because like, well, what, everyone's worried I'm going to get hurt. I'm like, you can get hurt walking down the stairs. Like you can get hurt, so I love how much it's grown in the specialty piece and all that. I miss the way it's kind of kept kids more athletic and, could think outside the box of what they know now. But I think the back and forth coaching thing can be difficult for some kids. And I think a lot of it falls back on us and how we choose to go about this. Cause if I ever told a kid, this is how you do it, and the only way you can do it is the way I tell you to do that, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, disservice to them. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think we have to keep an open mind as coaches that there are other ways to learn and to teach and to grow and to evolve and help our kids develop and continue on.
I love that. I love that you see it, right? And you're at the highest level of coaching to understand like that it's, I thought it might have just been me, but I know I'm not just me. I know that, but I'm thankful that you have maybe what's the right word? Positive outlook on it, on like take things from both of them and put it in your toolbox. So I love that.
Yeah, I'm a both sides of the coin person. It's just kind of how I've always been. Like I'm a naturally like find the good, the positive in everything. And so but I also can see both sides of the coin often. So sometimes it gets me in trouble, but I think for the most part, it allows my players and the people around me to know that like I'm thinking and I'm learning and I'm growing. And it matters to me that like, it's not just my way, or the highway. So,
yep. So how do you build and I know you mentioned this earlier about like the loyalty piece, but this is going to be a two-parter. I usually ask them separately, but I'll ask you them together. So how do you build a successful culture on the level of buy-in and mindset? And then to double down on that, or the second part of that is then how do you build a successful program on the level of wins and sustainability?
Gosh. Well, the second question, I can't really, I can give you some ideas, but I haven't really done it yet. But I feel like we're, only being in my third year as a head coach, like time will tell, obviously. Like I feel good about where we're at, but only time and results will tell. But I think when it comes to building the culture and coming in, like I think, Beth Torina she's the head coach at LSU for softball. She's a good friend and mentor of mine. And she said to me when I, got the job, she was like, whatever it is that you're going to go with in your culture, she's like, it's got to be repeatable, simple, and straight to the point, and like clear. And one of my big things I use with my team and I say a lot is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And so I have to communicate and articulate clearly for you to understand. And when I'm being unclear, it's like, it's not good for you because then you get lost in it. Right. So when I was putting together our core values and, you always have a running list as an assistant of like when the day comes. Right. So you're always kind of like thinking about it. And it was loyalty, legacy, attitude, and love, pretty much. Like I call it heart, but it's like loving what you do, having great attitude, being loyal to this program, and then leaving a legacy. Those are our 4 core values. And so I think you have to make it clear, straight to the point, repeatable for your kids, because they're going to get asked at camps. They're going to get asked by recruits, like, what's important to you guys? Like, what are your core values? Like, it's such a term. And so I wanted them also to be revolved around things they could control. Like we can control our attitude. We can control our heart and our love. We can control our loyalty. We can control the legacy that we leave behind in some capacity. So also it's also in their hands. So they feel like they have ownership over it. And so, but it was very to the point, and none of them are really about winning for me. It was like, if we do all these things, we can put ourselves in a place to win, but winning is never guaranteed, or, you could do everything right and lose a game, so, I think that, and as a coach, as a coaching staff, you have to talk it, you have to breathe it, you have to live it, you have to show them that it's also important. Like it starts with you, right? If it's important to you, then they can pick up on it. And so you kind of build everything around that. We do a lot of journaling, we do a lot of prompting, we do a lot of readings, we do a lot of videos, like that all link back to this stuff. So it's just a constant effort to implement. And I guess at the end of the day, like I said, it starts with you. And if you don't believe in it, they're going to know like that. They're going to pick it up right away. So whatever you build in, it has to be so important to you, and you have to truly believe in it.
Yeah. So what kind of tips or advice do you have for any new or struggling coaches?
I think for new coaches, I think stay true to who you are. Like I said, believe in what you're doing, and then make it collaborative. That's the one thing when I got here when I got introduced to the team as the new head coach, we were on a Zoom call. It was like, I took the job that morning. It was on a Zoom call by 6 p.m. with the entire team. I had to tell my old team I was leaving. And one of the things I said to them on the call was like, I'm joining you in this. Like, I'm going to be a part of this with you. Like, this isn't about me coming in and saying, do, this is what we do. Leave everything in the past. It's like, no, you've had an experience up until this point. Now we're turning it on its head. You're getting a new head coach. Let me bring what I'm bringing and our staff is bringing, and you bring with you what you think is important to this program. Yeah. And like, let's come together. I think as a new coach, like being open to collaboration, being open to, you can't just dictate kids anymore. You can't. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. True. Yeah. It doesn't work. It doesn't. And you might have some kids that are raised that way, and that's great. But the majority of your team isn't going to be on board with like dictatorship anymore. And so, making them feel like they have some part in it and some ownership, I always recommend that to new coaches. And that's what was told to me. Getting by my mentors leading up to this, and but at the same time, knowing exactly what you want to do and where you want to go and how you're going to go about it. And so that, and I think struggling was like, I think, we went through some things last year as a team, and we had a 2-week, 3-week dip where we just really struggled. And I think the biggest thing is when you're having a hard time, you're not getting the wins, even if you're doing all the right things and it's just not showing up on the other side, just stay the course. Stay the course with what you believe. And I think lean into the people around you, your staff. Don't feel like you have to be on an island by yourself, because you do have support. You do have people around you, and even your team, they feel it, so be open, honest, and lead them in a way that shows that you're in it with them. And I think if you're struggling, it just staying the course. And one of the things I think I reference a lot of, because, I listen to a lot of people. I think Kara Lawson at Duke, she just gives such great content. I don't know if you follow her at all, but one of the things that she said was a lot of people quit right before it happens. A lot of people give up right before the turning point. So you really don't know when it's going to turn over. And so you have to be willing to see it through. And so we talk about that a lot as a team. And but if it's a struggle, I would definitely just recommend stay the course and be true to who you are.
Absolutely. So my favorite question and the name of this podcast, and you've said it a few times, my favorite question is, because for one, I love your advice and I love your tips for new and struggling, because I think that everybody's going to have to overcome that, whether as a new coach or maybe 20 years in, you're still going to have some of those things come up, right? So I love that you were able to on the spot bring up some options and some tips and advice. So thank you for that. But my favorite question and the name of this podcast is, why do you coach? What is your coach's why?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, like I know what this sport did for me as a person, as a player. It changed my life forever. Like I have so many memories. I have so many lessons learned, the shaping of who I've become as a person, the friendships, the relationships I've created that, I still have. Like you were talking about, I know, take this back to Illinois football. There's like a group of us from my college teammates. We went back to Champaign and we went to the game versus Michigan. Like we got together, like, those were people I've had in my life now for 20 plus years. And I think knowing all that this sport has given me is my motivation every single day. Cause I know that what we're doing as a staff and as coaches, all of us, we're impacting these people's lives forever. And it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be a mix of both. Like nothing's ever perfect, but I know that I've taken those things that I've learned and become, and I've been able to implement them to affect people in a positive way, hopefully, and continue on that path. But seeing a kid walk in the door freshman year and seeing them walk out and graduate is the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done as far as coaching. And so I think that combined with just like, I absolutely love competing. I love competing. I love, yes, it's the highest of highs when you win, and it can be the lowest of lows that you feel when you've lost. Like I've lost championship games and tough moments and been this close to playing in the World Series. Like there's been all kinds of things along the way, but all of that has, I've never lost my love to compete, no matter how good or bad it's gotten. So I think the first part and that part to me is why I show up every day and why I've continued on in this profession through all the ebbs and flows and changes that college, and college athletics is in its most vulnerable state and it's changing so fast. And, but that doesn't, scare me away or doesn't make me want to change at all. I just want to see it, look back in 10 years and be like, that's what it was like. And now look at where we are now. So, but I think those two things kind of combined are really my why.
I love it. I love your why.
Thanks.
Of course. And just so you guys know, if you guys are still listening to this podcast on YouTube, make sure you guys HTB, hit the bell, like, subscribe, all that. For on the audio listeners, I always have to throw this in there just so you know.
Yes, of course.
If you're an audio listener, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, PocketCasts, any of the other ones, make sure you guys leave a review, say what you got to say. Oh, hit the stars first. Then you can leave a review, say what you got to say, but whatever you say it with your chest because we want to hear it. Coach, I appreciate you jumping on here today. I have one more question that I like to just end with, kind of a light note. So what state hold on. We're trying to figure out what this right. What state in the country produces the best or has the best high school softball?
Oh gosh. I think you've got a tie because I've never lived in these places or, seen a whole high school season through, but I think between Texas and California, you're probably your two best. One for the sheer size of both those states and the population, but just year-round softball, like southern, middle to Southern California, year-round softball. Like I said, the size, I think, especially, Texas just takes everything so seriously when it comes to athletics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything's bigger in Texas, as they say. So I think those probably two, you can probably, you could build a whole team off just those states easily,
Yeah.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So Cali and Texas are the two you're going with. All right. I respect it. I definitely respect that.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to have you back on here again, Coach. I think that The conversation today was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And I really think that if we were to go again, we can talk on the more schematic side of things, like dive into the coaching side, right? Not that you have to give away too much sauce, but you can at least
No, you
tell
good.
us, what your day-to-days look like, for coaches who might be looking for that type of thing. So I'd love to have you back on here whenever, maybe after season, whenever you're done, we can kind of touch back again and see what it's like.
Yeah, for
where
sure.
you're
Just
at.
let me know. I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, Coach, I really appreciate you jumping on today. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.